Okay, so let's start reading. Yasmin, you said you can read. Go
Yeah.
ahead. In other words,
In other words, man's way to liberation and perfection lies through an increasing impersonality. It is his ancient and constant experience that the more he opens himself to the impersonal and infinite, to that which is pure and high and one and common in all things and beings, the impersonal and infinite in nature, the impersonal and infinite in life, the impersonal and infinite in his own subjectivity, the less he is bound by his ego and by the circle of the finite, the more he feels a sense of largeness, peace, pure happiness, the pleasure, joy, satisfaction, which the finite by itself can give, or the ego in its own right attain, is transitory, petty, and insecure. To dwell entirely in the ego sense and its finite conceptions, powers, satisfaction, is to find this world forever full of transiences and sufferings, anithayam, asukham. The finite life is always troubled by a certain sense of vanity for this fundamental reason that the finite is not the whole or the highest truth of life. Life is not entirely real until it opens into the sense of the infinite. It is for this reason that the Gita opens its Gospel of Works by insisting on the Brahmic consciousness, the impersonal life, the great object of the discipline of the ancient sages. For the impersonal, the infinite, the one in which all the impermanent, mutable, multiple activity of the world finds above itself its base of permanence, security, and peace, is the immobile self, the Akshara, the Brahman. If we see this, we shall see that to raise one's consciousness and the poise of one's being out of the limited personality into this infinite and impersonal Brahman is the first spiritual necessity. To see all beings in this one self is the knowledge which raises the soul out of egoistic ignorance and its works and results. To live in it is to acquire peace and firm spiritual foundation.
okay, so about 2/3 of a page, the para. So what he's saying is we have to discuss personality and impersonality. Okay, very interesting. When we are in the physical world, everything which has got a form is real to us. Everything that has got a form. Okay. So that is the finite. But and we that's why we also identify ourselves as our own body, which is finite. Okay. So now he's saying that when you are in the world and you are seeing the finite, then you are in ignorance. You are not aware of your soul. So the more you become impersonal and the more you become infinite, then you are going nearer and nearer to the divine and the truth. So what is this impersonality? Let us have a look. Good morning, Tarika. In other words, man's way to liberation and perfection.
Good morning, Ranganath.
Good morning. Yeah. Yes. You have to get the text. I don't know. In other words, okay, we are there. So, in other words, man's way to liberation and perfection. Perfection also is perfection of the soul, okay, not the body, mind, life. Because the body, mind, life can be perfect only at the third level, the Purushottama. But he's speaking about the Akshara and the Brahman, the second level. So, even increasing liberation and perfection. So, let's be very clear about what is liberation. We are thinking that we are body, mind, life, but actually you are soul. because that's a permanent part. The body-mind life is not permanent, it will disappear in time. Even if you are 90, 100, 110, even then, one day it will disappear. Brahmananda was supposed to live for 300 years. Of course, with yoga, you can live. And the Ishopanishad says, man should want, he should desire to live for 100 years. Shatam sama, jiji vishet. He should be willing and wanting to live for 100. Life is very precious. Okay, so the more we live, the more we benefit. Because here only on life can we progress. We can't progress in the other levels because there is immutability there. There is no progress there. There is static condition. So, increasing impersonality. So, liberation is when you realize that you are soul and you are not the body-mind life. That is liberation. Your consciousness comes out and you are standing outside your body-mind life and you see everything, the whole universe outside yourself. That's the liberation. And perfection, because the soul which is in the soul which is in a confusion, the soul is thinking I am body, mind, life at this level. Okay, there's a confusion in the mind between the mental Purusha and the soul. The mental Purusha is different from the soul, and the mental Purusha is thinking I am body, mind, life. But the mental Purusha, when it goes out, okay, it is the mental Purusha that realizes the impersonal part. Okay, that is the soul. Increasing impersonality. So when you go from level 1 to level 2, we have seen that already, everything becomes impersonal. Your personality, which is your body, mind, life, is no more what you are. So you become impersonal. Also remember that if you are in the cosmic consciousness, you are in everybody and everybody is in you. So personality is not important at all then. Okay? So impersonal. Not only that, you start seeing the infinite forces. You see the infinite matter, you see the infinite prana, throwing out waves of energy, what Srimba calls energisms, and you also see that mental world is infinite. That's the impersonality. It is, I'm reading the next sentence, it is his ancient and constant experience that the more he opens himself to the impersonal and infinite, to that which is pure and high and one and common in all things and beings, the impersonal and the infinite in nature, the impersonal and infinite in life, the impersonal and infinite in his own subjectivity. We'll discuss all this. The less he is bound by his ego and by the circle of the finite, the more he feels a sense of largeness, peace, pure happiness. Huge sentence, but Srimad put so many ideas, we have to see what he means. So, the maximum of personality and finiteness is the ego. Cause of all this is the ego. So when you lose your ego, the finiteness disappears. The personality disappears. So that's when you graduate from level 1 to level 2. Level 2 is the spiritual planes of consciousness, which you can call the Brahmic consciousness or the Akshara or the immobile. You can see further down, he has used these words and they are equivalent words. So when you say self, you must be very clear what you understand by self. Akshara, the immutable, and Brahman consciousness. You are in consciousness where there is infinity. You are aware of the infinity. You see the finites, but they are of no consequence. They are not of importance at all. The more you, and then you start seeing the impersonal and the infinite where? First of all, you see it in nature. You start seeing the impersonality in nature. You don't see only the energy. You don't see the results of energy. You see the energy itself. You see the vast world of prana. You see the vast world of matter. You see the vast world of the mental awareness, consciousness. You see the vast world. You don't see and even if you see the small vitals of everybody, they are only small knots in the sea. They are only small waves of the vast sea. You start seeing the seas. They are more important than the waves. And then you see in nature. Then he's saying the impersonal and infinite in life. You see that life is there everywhere, in animals, in insects. There is a life that is more important than the form. Okay? The forms are incidental and inconsequent, not important at all. You see more the life everywhere. Okay? The one life which is there everywhere you see. So it becomes impersonal. The forms don't matter so much. And then in life, then the impersonal and infinite in your own subjectivity. What does this mean? It means that you find yourself in everybody, and everybody also you can find in yourself. Sometimes separately, sometimes both together. Okay? So there is a cosmic consciousness. You find yourself, your own subjectivity. The whole world is within you. Okay? And everybody else also is part of you. Okay? This is what he's saying. And the more you get this impersonality, the more he feels a sense of largeness, peace, pure happiness. Now, I want you to consider on these words and how they are equal to each other. Okay, so peace, pure happiness. Okay, the more the fourth line from the top. Okay, to that which is pure and high and one and common. He has used 4 adjectives. Pure. Achha, now tell me, when something is pure, there is nothing else except that substance. Therefore, pure suggests oneness. Okay? And that can be had only at the high level. Okay? So pure and one are almost synonyms here. And common. When you see life in all things, that is a common element. Okay? When you see the plane of thought, the impersonal plane of thought, the thoughts of all others are only small knots and small movements, small whirlpools in the vast sea of thought. So this is why pure and high and one and common suggest each other. Okay? So that's what it is. I'm pointing out to you how Srivanda uses words and what we have to see behind the words. Purity and oneness are almost all. If there is a oneness, there cannot be any impurity. And if there is purity, then also you cannot see anyone except one. Okay. So these ways help to picture the infinite. It's very helpful. Then he's saying the more the impersonal, the less he is bound by ego. So ego is the one that creates maximum finiteness. You are finite, you are only concentrated on yourself. So that goes away, you go into the Brahmic consciousness. There is a subtler form of ego, but that is another subject and we'll come to that later on. Okay. Ego is very difficult to get rid of. Why? Because both the infinite and the finite are equally divine. You can't say that the infinite is superior to the finite. You can't say that. Okay? Because in God's way of looking, the infinite also is involved in the finite. And the finite is also there as a potential in the infinite. Okay? Both are equal to each other. If you remember, so many lines Surendra has used in poetry also. The hand that sent Jupiter spinning through heaven spends all its cunning to fashion a curve. Yeah? In the poem Who, he says that. So the amount of energy spent in the large is also the same quality as the energy spent in creating the smallest. In the Life Divine, you remember he says the suns and the stars, the amount of energy that is there is also there in the anthill. There he says that. So it's a way of seeing, and unfortunately we begin with the finite, but we have to reach the infinite. That's why the infinite is so attractive to us. So when it is so attractive, they stay put there. That's the ascetic way. But Srivanda says, no, go to the next level, and you will see that finite and infinite are both equally wonderful. Okay, and both are there, form as well as formlessness. The more you go towards the formlessness, you are free. But you go even higher up, then you are free, and at the same time, you can be in the physical world. I go to the next sentence. The pleasure, joy, satisfaction to which the finite by itself can give, or the ego in its own right attain. Okay? So this can be a little confusing grammatically. What he's saying is that the ego can give you a certain satisfaction, or the ego can attain satisfaction in its own right. Okay, so the word right and attain is the verb. Okay, the ego can attain in its own right. Attain what? Pleasure, joy, satisfaction. Okay? The pleasure, joy, satisfaction which the finite by itself can give, or the ego in its own right attain, is transitory. The pleasure that we get when the egoistic consciousness is transitory. Yes, there is pleasure. When you eat something nice, there is pleasure. When you read something beautiful, there is pleasure. But all these are transitory, fleeting, okay, evanescent. They disappear. They come and disappear. But if you go to the infinite, if you go to the Brahmic consciousness, that satisfaction, pleasure and joy can become permanent. That's what he's saying. But our joy is transitory, petty, and insecure. Insecure, it may disappear any minute. To dwell entirely in the ego sense and its finite conceptions. So note that the connection between the ego and the finite is very, very clear. And these finiteness is manifested how? In your thoughts, in your conceptions, in your powers, in the vital movements, in the satisfactions also, is to find this world of forever, full of transience and suffering. Anityam asukham. This is the 33rd verse of the 9th chapter. Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. This is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. You have come into this world which is anityam, it's transitory and full of suffering. This world, lokam imam, this world. Then what is the way out? Bhajasvamam. Worship me and you will be free. Okay. Anityam asukham. The finite life is always troubled by a certain sense of vanity for this fundamental reason that the finite is not the whole or the highest truth of life. When you use the word vanity, it means fickleness. Okay, vanity is a certain sense of vanity, something is not at all of importance, and a certain sense of vanity, uselessness. Okay, for this fundamental reason that the finite is not the whole or the highest; it's at the lower end or the highest truth of life. That's why maybe if man had started from the highest level, he would have found the finite absolutely marvelous. But we are starting from the finite, and therefore we find the infinite marvelous. But Shraddha wants you to enjoy both. And you can't enjoy both either in level 1 or level 2. You have to go to level 3 to be able to enjoy both, finite as well as infinite. You will enjoy the infinite in the second level, and that is far superior satisfaction than satisfaction in level 1. There is satisfaction in level 1. Of course there is, but transitory and fleeting. Okay. And sense-based. The senses give you pleasure, but they also give you pain. But when you go to level 2, there is no pain, because you are in the Brahmic consciousness and you have lost contact with the body-mind life. And when you have lost contact with the body-mind life, the body-mind life will continue to have its pains and aches, okay, and diseases. But you will be free. The consciousness is free because it is pure, one, and infinite. Okay, it is real until it opens the sense of that. Now, that last phrase I have not yet read, I'm going to read that now. Life is not entirely real until it opens into the sense of the infinite. Okay? There it becomes real. Real means you start seeing the divine energy everywhere. At our level, we don't see the divine energy at all. We only see the results of the energy. But there you will start seeing the energy itself. Life is not entirely real until it opens into the sense of the infinite. Just like electricity. Huh? Electricity we don't see, but we see the results of electricity. We light a lamp, we know that's electricity which is giving light. When the fan is switched on, it is the electricity which is switching to the. We see the results, but we don't see the electricity. But if you go into a higher level of consciousness, you will see the prana, you will see the electricity. Let me tell you one thing very interesting. Okay, it's quite open, so that I can even take names. Okay, it was Bob. Okay, Bob at one time in America, he even tested drugs. Now, when you take drugs, sometimes you can have good uh, results and sometimes you can have bad results, mostly bad. And in any case, it is very, very relative. It doesn't last. But when he took that, he had very good experiences. He could see the electricity flowing in the wires. He could see blood flowing in the veins. Okay? But that didn't last too long. Okay? So this is what happens. Without taking drugs, you go to the Brahmic consciousness. That's what you will see. So that's what I mean by the petty and insecure. It lasts for a very short time. Okay. So it's when you go there, you start seeing the cause of everything. You start seeing electricity. You start seeing the vast plane of energy, which is causing all these small energisms. Okay? You see the mind. You see the, ultimately, if you are lucky enough, you will see the divine who is causing all these things. The finite life is always troubled by a sense of vanity for its fundamental reason that the finite is not the whole or the highest truth of life. Life is not entirely real until it opens to the sense of the infinite. Because we are starting from the bottom, the infinite is wonderful for us. And of course it is wonderful and we go there. But the problem is that when you go to the wonderful, the infinite, you start rejecting the finite. Srimno is not acceptable. He is not accepting this way of looking at things. He says, no, even the finite is divine. So go up, but you can't see it at level 2. You have to go to level 3 to be able to see that. The Kshara consciousness, level 1, Akshara consciousness, level 2, where you see the infinite, and you go to the Purushottama consciousness, okay? Uttama Purusha. There you see both. Okay? You see, divine is there everywhere. Now, I'm reading the next sentence. It is for this reason that the Gita opens its gospel of works, Karma Yoga, by insisting on the Brahmic consciousness. Go to the self, go to the Akshara consciousness, go to the Brahmic consciousness. Okay? Go to Nirvana if necessary. It's the same. But Nirvana has got a little negative connotation. Okay? That means there is a nihil, nothing is there. Nothing is there in the sense that everything is one and indescribable. It is featureless. That's why I feel like that. Okay? Yeah. So it is for this reason that the Gita opens its gospel of works by insisting on the Brahmic consciousness, the impersonal life, that great object of the discipline of the ancient sages. All our scriptures, they stress the importance of the Brahmic consciousness. Okay. Some of them go even beyond. But the first step to be taken is the Brahmic consciousness. You must go to the self. Get rid of your identification with body, mind, life. Become free. Get rid of ego. Okay. They opens his gospel of works by insisting on the Brahmic consciousness. The impersonal life. Yeah.
Ranganath, one question.
Yeah.
We go to the Brahmic consciousness when we have realized the soul. Only then, right?
Yes, that's right. You can't realize that now because you are identified with your body, mind, life. When you realize your soul, you realize that your body-mind life is not. They are only instruments given to you temporarily. That's all. Okay,
So
that's
that is the Brahman consciousness.
yeah. It is consciousness as well as soul. Okay? It is consciousness as well as soul. There are some philosophers who say the soul is not only consciousness because it can also be Sat, it can also be Shakti, it can also be Ananda. So it's a way of speaking. Actually, the soul is all the three together. Huh? But you realize this when you go to the highest levels. Remember, the one becoming the many. So in the lower levels, the soul can be experienced as only substance, Sat. It can be experienced as consciousness, Chit. It can be experienced separately as only power. It can also be experienced separately as only Ananda. And when you experience these things, okay, you have different philosophies. I've told you this before also. So suppose you experience the soul as a very subtle substance, okay, you have the Mayavada philosophy, the Buddhistic philosophy. Okay. When you experience the Chit consciousness, okay, it is pure consciousness. The Ananda and the Shakti may not be there. It is pure consciousness. Then you end up with the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha Prakriti. You are Purusha, Prakriti is everything else that you are not. Okay? Then when you experience the power aspect, it could be more tantric experience. And when you experience the Ananda, it is the Vaishnava philosophy of the divine is playing in the world. It's a play, Leela. So it is possible to experience. I am saying this because just now Pallavi asked whether consciousness and soul. Okay, so it can be experienced as different things, but mainly it is usually consciousness. Okay, so we go to the next sentence. It is that we read. It is for this reason that the Gita opens its gospel of works, Karma Yoga, by insisting on the Brahmic consciousness, the impersonal life, that great object of the discipline of the ancient sages. Now, going to level 2 and realizing the self is common to all philosophies and all yogas. That's the first step. You have to read that. The integral yoga also says that that's the first step. But the integral yoga says there are more steps. The other yogas say this is enough. So you realize the soul and that is enough. But the Accidental says not enough because you have to realize the divine in the finite also. So you go up. You can't realize by coming down. Okay, you have to go up. If you go up, the depths also open up for you. The higher you go, the more down you can go with your higher consciousness. That's it. Okay. So I'm reading the next sentence. For the impersonal, the infinite, the one in which all the impermanent, mutable, multiple activity of the world finds above itself its base of permanence, security and peace, is an immobile self. Immobile, immutable, silent, non-moving, okay, static, immobile self. The Akshara, the Brahman. So all these are equivalent words. Brahmic consciousness, self, Akshara, and Brahman. Okay? So don't get confused. And what are its features? What is this consciousness? It is something infinite. It is something permanent. It is something static. It doesn't need to change because it's perfect. Okay? So immutability, featurelessness. Okay? No limited features at all. It's infinite. Okay? And this is the cosmic consciousness. When you are there, you can't even describe it. Ineffable. You can't speak about it. How can you speak about something which has no features? When there are features and characteristics, you can speak about it. You can say it is black, it is this much, it is round, it is this, it is that, it is supple. But if none of these things are there, how will you speak about it? You can't. That's why it's ineffable. You can only experience it, but you can't speak about it. If we see this, we shall see that to raise one's consciousness and the poise of one's being out of limited personality. Note personality P lowercase, he means body mind life. Okay? Out of limited personality into this infinite and impersonal Brahman is the first spiritual necessity. In every yoga, it's the first spiritual necessity. To see all beings in this oneself is a knowledge which raises the soul out of egoistic ignorance and its works and results. To live in it is to acquire peace and firm spiritual foundation. So, to raise the soul out of egoistic consciousness is one thing, but to live in it is another thing. In the beginning, the first time you get the experience, it can be a very short period. It can be, I know one person who had it for 2-3 hours. Absolutely nothing seemed to matter in the physical world. And there was somebody who had it for 6 months. Okay? But this is all, but it has to, you have to live in it. If you want to live in it, it shouldn't be an experience only, it should be a permanent experience, which is realization. Okay? So that's what is the difference between realization and experience. Now the next one is a slightly more than a page, and we have 6-7 minutes. Maybe we can read it. Who has the? Everybody has the text.
Yes, Rangada.
Okay, Pallavi, if you have the text, read it. The way to bring, we'll just read it today.
The way to bring about this great transformation follows a double path. For there is the way of knowledge and there is the way of works, and the Gita combines them in a firm synthesis. The way of knowledge is to turn the understanding, the intelligent will, away from its downward absorption in the workings of the mind and the senses and upward to the self, the Purusha or Brahman. It is to make it dwell always on the one idea of the one self and not in the many branching conceptions of the mind and many streaming impulses of desire. Taken by itself, this path would seem to lead to the complete renunciation of works, to an immobile passivity, and to the severance of the soul from nature. But in reality, such an absolute renunciation, passivity, and severance are impossible. Purusha and Prakriti are twin principles of being which cannot be severed. And so long as we remain in nature, our workings in nature must continue, even though they may take a different form or rather a different sense from those of the unenlightened soul. The real renunciation, for renunciation, sannyasa, there must be, is not the fleeing from works, but the slaying of ego and desire. The way is to abandon attachment to the fruit of works even while doing them. And the way is to recognize nature as the agent and leave her to do her works and to live in the soul as the witness and sustainer, watching and sustaining her, but not attached either to her actions or their fruits. The ego, the limited and troubled personality, is then quieted and merged in the consciousness of the one impersonal self, while the works of nature continue to our vision to operate through all these becomings or existences who are now seen by us as living and acting and moving under her impulsion entirely in this one infinite being. Our own finite existence is seen and felt to be only one of these, and its workings are seen and felt to be those of nature, not of our real self, which is the silent impersonal unity. The ego claimed them as its own doings, and therefore we thought them ours. But the ego is now dead, and henceforth they are no longer ours, but nature's. We have achieved by the slaying of ego impersonality in our being and consciousness. We have achieved by the renunciation of desire impersonality in our works of our nature. We are free not only in inaction, but in action. Our liberty does not depend on a physical and temperamental immobility and vacancy, nor do we fall from freedom directly act. Even in a full current of natural action, the impersonal soul in us remains calm, still, and free.
Okay, so it's time now. So we have to stop today because much of the ideas in this para we have already discussed very often. So it's not something absolutely new, but we'll discuss this in detail because he is talking of the sense of doership, okay, which disappears in the Brahmic consciousness. It disappears, and there's something even more that the soul is free, but the body, mind, life continues its old habits. But he's talking of something where even the soul also, the body, mind, life also can become perfect. That's what he's saying. So we'll look at this next time. Okay. We'll look at this next time, next Saturday. So right now, say au revoir to everybody.
Au
Have a
revoir.
Merci
see you on Tuesday.